Welcome, everyone, to One Leader's Mind, a web series hosted by One Mind at Work. I am really excited today to be speaking with Harvey. Aaron is the co-founder of Ready, Set, Rocket, which is a digital marketing agency based in New York City, and is also the co-founder of Made of Millions, a nonprofit with a mission to change how the world perceives mental health. Aaron, thank you so much for joining me. So let's jump into it. Can you share with me and our viewers the mission of Made of Millions and what led you to start mental health advocacy work?
Yeah, so the mission of Made of Millions is to change how the world perceives mental health. And so we focus on using art, technology, media to democratize access to mental health education. We see our role being a really critical role between mental health awareness, the symptom onset, and then actually going and getting care. So all that psychoeducation, community building, all those things in between that can really put you in the driver's seat of your own care and make sure that you can be your own best advocate. That's really our sweet spot where we like to play. And then as far as how I got into it, well, when I was very young, I had really taboo, repetitive, intrusive thoughts that would be like flashes of graphics and even my own voice telling me things. And I'd never understood what it was. And a lot of times they were very violent, harm against family members, harm against myself, harm against, kids, people I loved. It seemed totally indiscriminate and totally against my values or what I believed or what I stood for. And those kind of morphed and changed over about a 20-year period. And during that time, I just kept it all very much bottled up and secretive because I was afraid that, I could go to jail, or maybe I was almost a psychopath. Maybe I was going to do something. And it's a really kind of debilitating cascade of experiences where you have more comorbidities with depression and self-harm and substance use and things of that nature. So when I finally figured it out, I was, co-running a agency in New York, and finally had the courage to search for violent thoughts online. And that's where I realized, like, oh, wow, there's this whole thing called obsessive compulsive disorder that has nothing to do with hand washing and germs. And so once I kind of figured out what was going on in my brain and how I needed to get a hold of my own experience and go through my own care, I then wanted to use what I do every day with clients, design, branding, marketing, communications, and actually start to develop charitable resources that could go back to the community and help find that 13-year-old version of me that is starting their symptom onset search, and try to show up as a credible, not-for-profit voice in that mix.
Thank you for sharing that story with us. We talk a lot about the importance of being vulnerable as individuals, as leaders, and really sort of opening ourselves up. So appreciate you, again, sharing your own experience. I think this connection between what you were dealing with and also the ability or potential to use your professional skills to really make a difference is so closely aligned, right? How can we think about the power of messages, the power of storytelling and narrative to really help educate people and spread the word? So wonderful that you found these connections and this opportunity to really make a difference.
And I would say that the Made of Millions concept was that what we were really seeing back in 2016 when we started was people banding together to share personal stories. So whether you were a firefighter or a stay-at-home parent or an entrepreneur, that's really where the change is taking place. It was happening by the millions of people who were affected by mental health. And so we've always tried to be more of a, grassroots for sufferer by sufferer type of movement, because at the end of the day, it is the advocacy. It's just being done on the day-to-day, people using whatever skills they have to try to make a difference.
Absolutely. Can you speak a little bit to your experience in opening up as a business leader about your own mental health struggles? How did you share this with your team members, and what kind of reception did you have?
Yeah, it's a tough question I don't get asked too often. I think opening up on the business side actually is really difficult. So I decided to do it all at once. I was fortunate enough to have a contact at Fast Company that allowed me to write an op-ed about my experience with intrusive thoughts, and then kind of specifically as an entrepreneur. And so I came out with some pretty dark stuff, especially at that time, talking about being afraid I might have been a pedophile or a murderer or all these different things. And I was extremely concerned about my team, wanting to be in the office, working late on design projects, concerned about losing clients or opportunities because of some of these things being misunderstood. But I have to say, when I did, my team kind of sat my team down and like told them what I had been going through. And I showed a couple of videos on YouTube of kids talking about their similar experience and kind of allowed them to also tell my story for me, which can be really powerful and much easier. And, since then, I've just been nose down grinding on this advocacy since then. So it's been good. I think overall, it's been good for us. And as the mental health conversation has evolved, it's become a bit of an attribute for our companies because at least there is a level of honesty about what's going on in the space and some consideration for, the realities of what we're all facing, especially in the current times.
Certainly reassuring to hear, as challenging and I'm sure as scary as it was stepping into this, not knowing how your team members would perceive you, how your clients would perceive you, what business would look like, that you received, I think, sort of an open arms reaction, right? And really felt welcome within this community. In one of your pieces, your subsequent pieces for Fast Company, you talked about the leadership imperative in really bringing visibility and vulnerability to these experiences. And I think, as you've noted, what we've seen in the course of the past couple of years is barriers coming down and people really being much more comfortable in sharing what they're going through as individuals and thinking about how they can make connections as a leader to support their team members.
I think at first everyone felt in the leadership role that they had to have an epic mental health story to be able to get behind the movement. And I think that's obviously like calmed down a bit and people are kind of willing to say, hey, this actually isn't something that's affected me too greatly personally, but I know it's important and we're going to make those investments in it. But the bottom line is, like, as open as it seemingly has gotten, there still is a lot of stigma. And it also depends on the industry, right? Like working in media and more progressive forms of industry, it's a little bit easier. If you're working on a factory floor, it's different. So it is really critical that from the very top down, those leadership acknowledgements, promises, kind of storylines are being told, but they're being actually backed with meaningful policy programs, benefits, things of that nature. So it's almost like, you got to get your house in order with the policy, the programs, the benefits, and then talk about it. You know what I mean? In order to do it effectively. Otherwise, it sounds like lip service.
Right. Absolutely true. I mean, we want leaders to be vocal and supportive about this, but that's not going to be enough to really help the workforce, right? We need to make sure that we have programs in place, that we're working more holistically across an organization to make sure people have access to resources, that they know about those resources, and that we're really investing this over time. I want to pivot a little bit to Made Academy, which is a project under Made of Millions. So Made Academy is a workplace mental health curriculum that you developed, really with this focus on increasing education, awareness, reducing stigma of mental health at work, and democratizing access to this information. And at One Mind at Work, we're really thrilled to be partnering with you to launch Made Academy to all of our members at One Mind at Work, and really collaborating to make this program even more accessible to a global workforce. Tell me a little bit about how this curriculum was developed and how you view, in this moment in time, the workplace as a really critical lever in making an impact in mental health.
Yeah, I mean, where we are today as a society is we still are not learning any psychoeducation growing up. We're not being taught that in schools. It's not commonly talked about in households. So at the end of the day, we have people growing up with various undiagnosed or, untreated conditions, symptoms, and then going into the workforce where we're spending most of our time and don't have, frankly, the education for ourselves in the workplace application, and then our ability to go home and live the type of lives that we want to live and support our families in different ways. So for us, the workplace was not necessarily Made of Millions wants to get into the B2B game. It was like the workplace is battleground number one, because there's a financial interest and an energy at the corporate level in investing in people. And so this is an opportunity to bring psychoeducation into that and force that education. And we're fortunate enough to have Yahoo, Verizon Media at the time, actually provide us with the seed capital, if you will, to develop the program. And in that program, we were able to, essentially develop out signs, symptoms, empathy building, intersectionality, all these different factors that have a contribution to our mental health. And then how to talk about it in the workplace, how to speak up, how to support someone without being an armchair psychiatrist or psychologist, how to think about navigating your career in a way that is safe for you. So that, on the one hand, it's like exciting. We're giving you the psychoeducation to use in your life and use in your treatment and using your own path, wherever that is outside the office. But we're also giving you information that you need to actually ask for an accommodation and know what that means, and feel more confident doing those things.
Maybe one kind of final question as we get ready to launch this program to One Mind of Work members. What would you say to organizations, to businesses who are still nervous to step into this space and aren't sure that they're perhaps ready for bringing more visibility to this topic?
Yeah, I think when we started mental illness, mental health, mental disorders, it was very focused on the actual clinical condition. That concept or that definition has changed to be very broad and up for interpretation for mental wellness, overall state of well-being, et cetera, down to actual clinical conditions and their symptomologies. So I think what's important for today's business leaders is to recognize the idea that, and we actually brought forward in this piece of research called the Mental Health Matrix, where essentially we look at mental health conditions as one component. Those are clinically diagnosed conditions. We look at mental health situations. That could be a miscarriage. That could be any type of thing going on in someone's life that's personal. And then we also look at mental health intersectionality. What are those intersectional factors with racism, Asian, LGBTQ, et cetera? And then what are the different triggers, conflict, poor leadership, toxic workplaces, microaggressions? All of that together is a pretty good look at the sum of one's mental health, right? And there are quadrants that I, might traverse through 3 at a time. Someone else might actually be in all 4 at a time. So I think using that as a tool for empathy and understanding, but then recognizing most importantly that the majority of those things, actually a manager is really well equipped to handle, like handling workflows, handling anything regarding someone's actual role in the workplace, providing accommodations, providing support. There are a lot of things like that can be done that are completely apart from clinical intervention. And so there is a lot that you can do as a company to kind of take this movement forward and better support your staff and your employees.
I love that. Again, just coming back to what's really accessible and practical and within a reasonable scope for a manager or somebody in the workplace. Aaron, I want to thank you so much for your time today, and really looking forward to launching Made Academy to our members in the coming months. Thanks so much.
We're very excited to be partnering with you. Thank you.
My mother has had depression most of her life.
My uncle committed suicide when he was in his 30s.
I live with bipolar.
Now, more than ever, it's the world's leading cause of disability. Yet research to improve mental health lacks the attention physical health research receives. Visit onemind.org. From the lab to the front lines, accelerating brain health for all. Help us fund new treatments at onemind.org.
I'm living my best life.